Well, the time is 6 a.m. Central African time. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for choosing to tune into Eswatini TV and enjoying Kusile Breakfast Show to kickstart your day. My name is Sifiso Ngumalo.
And I am Notile Sithole. On the program today, during the tabling of the Ministry of Home Affairs Quarter 1 Performance Report, senators tasked the ministry to revisit the processes undertaken when issuing entry permits or official documentation or citizenship to foreign individuals. Today, we asked the ministry on how they are closing loopholes and tightening controls to restore public trust and protect the nation's identity.
And then you'll remember that yesterday, Cape Town became the epicenter of a continental conversation. The African Union AIP Water Investment Summit 2025 took center stage there, gathering that confronted a United States $30 billion annual shortfall in Africa's water sector. And while leaders and financiers debated solutions, here in Eswatini, the statistics cut closer to home. Rather, almost 40% of our people, most of them in the rural areas, still live without safe water, and nearly half of our municipal systems leak or lose what they carry. And a third of our hand pumps are broken. Now, the crisis is not somewhere else, it is here. And so the question now is, how do we move from these lofty declarations that are made in conference halls to the clean water that we want flowing in our villages, schools, as well as hospitals? Our economist, Sanela Sbia, will join us just to, understand some of the pledges that were made there and how we can further implicate all of that into our economy for sustainable solutions. You will remember that, part of the highlights that we received while the conversations were ongoing there is that His Majesty King Mswati III urged multilateral financial institutions, development partners, as well as the private sector to invest in water projects in Eswatini in what will be worth 40 billion Malangeni. Well, that equals 2.2 billion US dollars, which is only 7.33% of the 30 billion that was pledged there. And I suppose the bigger news, even making this whole thing even beautiful and even more promising for Eswatini, is that the African leaders adopted the declaration there in Cape Town, and that the AU will mobilize 570 billion emalangeni for 25 countries, and all we need is just 40 billion from that 570, and we are amongst those 25 countries. So because His Majesty the King's vision and foresight again is showing that it is for the development of the people of Eswatini. It's 3 minutes after 6. You're still watching Kusile Breakfast Show. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
But first, Tinzaba in a moment, and we'll have our English news bulletin at 7.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Solobukela Kusile Breakfast Show uhlelo lwangalesine kulesikhathi sitawubuka nathi tindzaba tesiswati. Ngonyama seyikhutsate bahlanyela imali tinkampane netinhlangano letisekela ngemali imisebenti yentuthuko lemikhulu kutsi tesekele imisebenti yemanti eveni Eswatini lebita imali lengu 40 billion emalangeni. Ingonyama beyiphefumula edolobheni le-Cape Town eNingizimu Afrika ngesikhathi kuvulwa umhlangano webunye be-Afrika wekwesekela ngemali imisebenzi yekuletha emanti idvute nesive, i-Africa Water Investment Summit. Kulo mhlangano ingonyama beyisingetfwe indvuna tembuso lekube indvuna etiko letemcebo waphansi nemandla umvane Nkosi Lonkokhela, indvuna yetange phandle umhlonishwa Pholile Shakhantu kanye nendvuna etiko letemabhizinisi umhlonishwa Manqoba Khumalo.
Ngesikhathi uvula lo mhlangano webunye be-Afrika wekusekela imisebenzi yekuletha emanti idvute nesive, ibe indzabamlonyeni indzaba yekusalela emva kwelivekati le-Afrika etinhlelweni talo tekusekela imisebenzi yemanti. Kuvala lo mkhathi, i-Afrika idzinga imali lengalinganiselwa ku-30 billion wama-dollars emelika ngeminyaka kute ifeze tinhlelo tayo tekuletha emanti lahlobile esiveni. Lo mhlangano ukhutsate bosomabhizinisi, tinkampane netinhlangano letisekela imisebenzi yentuthuko ngetimali kutsi tisekele imisebenzi yemanti e-Afrika kute kuvuleke imisebenzi kuthuthuke iminotfo yemave. Baholi bende lo mhlangano wabalithuba lokwethula imisebenzi labafisa ukuthi isekeleke ngetimali emaveni abo. Ingonyama imemetele ukuthi ilive leSwatini lakha luhlelo lokucokelela timali tekusekela imisebenzi lemikhulu yemanti. Ingonyama ikhutsate tinhlangano letisekela ngetimali imisebenzi yentuthuko bosomabhizinisi netinkampane kutsi tisekele imisebenzi yemanti yeveni leSwatini. Lemisebenzi kwakhiwa kwelidamu laseNondo nekukhuliswa kwelidamu laseHawani lokungumsebenzi lotawubita 115 million wama-dollars emelika nemgomo lotawusekela tinhlelo tekuletha emanti yeveni i-National Potable Water Sanitation and Hygiene Master Plan lokutawubita 2 billion wama-dollars emelika kuwenta usebente.
With the support of the African Union, the Global Water Partnership Southern Africa, and the Green Climate Fund, we are developing the Eswatini Water Investment Program set for completion by the end of 2025. This program will serve as a blueprint for mobilizing resources and implementing high-impact water projects. We are pleased to highlight that with new bankable initiatives, which we have prioritized and require funding estimated at about 115 million US. We have collaborated with our neighboring countries to develop water projects which are contributing immensely to our agricultural sector and other water requirements of our people. Eswatini has also been developing a number of dam water supply projects with the support of our development partners and financial institutions to improve water security. The preliminary investment required for our national potable water sanitation and hygiene wash master plan is estimated to be around $2 billion US. These projects are designed to enhance access to clean water, improve sanitation, strengthen climate resilience, and unlock economic opportunities across multiple sectors. To achieve these ambitions, we appeal to development partners, financial institutions, private investors, and multilateral institutions to join us as these projects require a lot of funding.
Silo semhlaba sithi ngekuhlanyela etinhlelweni temanti nangekubambisana, i-Afrika itawube ithuthukisa temphilo, inhlalakahle nemphumelelo yebantu. Mengameli waseNingizimu Afrika Cyril Ramaphosa uthi emave yase-Afrika atibekele kuyihlanganisa le mali lengu-30 billion wama-dollars emelika njalo ngeminyaka kute kushaya umnyaka wa-2030 kuti ahlangabetane nesidzingo sekusekela imisebenzi yekuthuthukisa luhlangothi lwemanti lathi amcoka empilweni yemuntfu nasekuthuthukiseni iminotfo yemave. Labanye baholi labafake ekhatsi mengameli waseBotswana Duma Boko babekele labasekela ngetimali imisebenzi yentuthuko emathuba ekuhlanyela emisebenzini yemanti kumave yabo. Komishina wetindzaba temandi nekutfutfukiswa kwetindzawo letisemaphandleni enhlanganweni ye-African Union umhlonishwa Moses Vilakazi utsi ikhona inshisekelo yokuhlanyela timali emisebentini yemanti kulabo labasekela ngetimali imisebenti yentuthuko.
So le nshisekelo seyikhona beyingekho kahle ngaloko ukuthi besitele yokuswa ngema-bankable la ngafika ukuthi na ufika uniketa leyo timali ngoba waze waba nale project yendlula kuyo lonke letinhlangothi sekuthi nyalo sebangathi i-bankable wenta njalo letimali tikhona futhi ke lendzaba le besiyenteka leli singathi geopolitics yakwakuthi sekufuna sibuke inward loyo umuntu atibuke ngekakhe domestically si-Africa si-AU sikukhanza ukuthi kumqoka kakhulu nokuthi sale kubuka kuletindzaba tetimali.
Indvuna yetiko letangephandle nekubambisana nalamanye emave umhlonishwa Pholile Shakhanto ithi bese kusikhathi sekuthi emave abambisane etindzabeni temisebenti yemanti.
Sesitawukhona nekuthi multilateral nyalo njengoba emave nje labekakhona amelelwe la sikhona ukuthi letindzaba temanti sithi sebenze sonke kanye ngoba siyathi ukuthi emanti avumbuka nje la kepha ahambe emave nemave usina sikusebenta sonke kanye kusho ukuthi sitawukhona ukuthi nema reserves ethu lakhona emanti nema projects ethu abe sustainable ngoba sesitawasebenta sikanye collectively as bomakhelwane and also nalaba labakhashane ngoba lamanye asuka khashane kanze ukuthi akafiki la kithi ngoba sebawabambe lela ku source.
Uzaqhubeka umhlangano ingonyama kanye namengameli waseBotswana Duma Boko ihloniphe baholi bemave lababe neligalelo ekutholakaleni kwemakhambi laqatulula tinsayi teluhlangothi lwetemanti laba kube ngumengameli waseNingizimu Afrika Cyril Ramaphosa nebaholi bemave iLesotho, Saudi Arabia, Tanzania, Senegal ne-United Arab Emirates lebebamelelwe tindvuna temanti kulomhlangano. Utsite usaqhubeka umsebenzi ingonyama yavuselana nomengameli waseNingizimu Afrika mengameli Cyril Ramaphosa kubheke ukuthi uthi uphela lo mhlangano kube sekunetimali letethenjiswe ngilabo labesekela imisebenzi yentuthuko lemikhulu kufukula livekati le-Afrika kude lithathe amagqathu lamakhulu etindzabeni temanti. Kuphefumula kwengonyama kulomhlangano kuvusetela ekutibophelela kwelive leSwatini kufeza umgomo wesithupha kwamhlabuhlangene lothi sive singahambi ngetulu kwamakhilomitha lamabili kuyokukha emanti lahlobile lihamba ngemgomo walo lothi kubebede likhale lide emanti lahlandekile. Live leSwatini litibekela umgomo wekuthi nga-2030 lonke likhaya libe linatha emanti lahlandekile ngetinhlelo talo letisabalele letihlose kuletha emanti lahlobile esiveni. Lebika kwetindzabeni ngisandile Makhanya naThabiso Dlamini edolobheni le-Cape Town even leNingizimu Afrika.
Umhlonishwa Mvunankulu Russell Mmiso Dlamini uthi umgomo wankwe uthi akucethwa indlala nebusweti eSwatini ngesikhathi lesifishane. Mvunankulu uthi lokhu kuhambisana nokuthi live leSwatini lithole tisombululo tekwekuthi libe nekudla lokwanele njengoba lenta ngekubamba umhlangano wesibili wekukhanga abahlanyeli imali kuthi ke batawukwenda imisebenzi yetekulima lapha eveni. Second National Agriculture Investment Indaba. Lo mhlangano ubanjelwe eHappy Valley ezulwini lapho kunalababuya etinhlangothini letahlukene tekulima kufaka ekhathi nalababuya ngephandle kwelive.
Umhlonishwa Mvunankulu Russell Dlamini ungenele lo mhlangano wemalanga lamabili le inhloso yawo kukukhanga abosomabhizinisi ukuthi bete eSwatini batawuvula emabhizinisi kude kulima. Lokhu kutawusita live ukuthi ligcine likhona kudondla lona njengoba kwamanje lisathenga 70% wekudla emaveni angephandle.
As a country, we are blessed to have a visionary leader in His Majesty King Mswati III who commissioned us on the Nkwe mandate towards the end of 2023 and has declared the year 2025 as a year of transformation. The Nkwe mandate is a call to end hunger and poverty in the kingdom within the shortest time possible. The Eswatini National Agricultural Investment Plan embraces values and principles of global initiatives such as the African Union's Agenda 2063, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 1 and 2, and the Food and Agriculture Organizations for Betters.
Umphathisifundza wakaHhohho uMntwana Nkosithandzile uthi impumelelo yalomhlangano itawusita leSwatini nangemisebenzi.
Agriculture has been the bedrock of our nation's economy. Today, with over 70% of our rural community relying on its success, we reaffirm its power to uplift lives and eradicate poverty. Your Excellency, your steadfast advocacy for food sovereignty continues to inspire us. Together with all industry leaders, we shall answer this call to secure a nourished and resilient future of eMaswati.
Lobuketa inhlelo enhlanganweni yakamhlaba yetekudla esifundzeni lesendasi neAfrika, Dr. Patrice Tala uthi leSwatini lenda lokunengi kucinisekisa kutsi liba nekudla lokwanele.
The Kingdom of Eswatini is leading in this respect, and as FAO, we are already using the Eswatini Agriculture Development Fund as an example that can be replicated in other countries. FAO pledges to continue providing technical assistance to EADF, especially to broaden the financial instrument it is deploying.
Umgomo walomhlangano kucinisekisa ukuthi leSwatini liyakhona kudondla kanzi kwenta lokhu hulumende umeme nebahlanyeli imali lababuya emaveni angephandle ukuthi batawubuka ematfuba lakhona kutekulima lapha eSwatini. Lobikako ngithemkosi Mavimbela ezulwini.
Iphalamende seyivume umbiko welihhovisi lemhlonishwa ndvunankhulu Russell Miso Dlamini wekwekuthi tinkinga tetemphilo letibhekene nelive tingasombululeka kanjani. Indlu yabayesikhulu ivume loku netichibelo letifaka ekhatsi kutsi imithi ingatsengwa yi-NDMA na Nature. Ndvunankhulu ukwemukele lokho.
Enyangeni lephelile umhlonishwa ndvunankhulu Russell Dlamini wavela ephalamende lapho abikela khona emalunga endlu yabayesikhulu ukuthi yini labayendako banguhulumende kucatulula tinkinga letibhekene nelitiko letemphilo. Lokunye lakubala ukuthi bafuna ukuthi i-Central Medical Stores itimele ibe yinkapani. Kusalungiswa lokho i-Nature ne-NDMA kungene ekutsengeni emaphilisi ngekuphuthuma kuphindze kuvalwe tikhala letikhona kutemphilo. Emalunga noma uvumile lombiko wandvunankhulu afake tichibelo.
Nangabe simniketa namhla umhlonishwa ndvunankhulu umcondzisi ukuthi akaqhubeke ayosebenzisa lo ngabe asiphikisi insini singumla labashaya umthetho ukuthi ngala sisebenza lo mthetho ukuthi nayi transformation ayendeke ya Central Medical Stores, but at the same time sithi ngala sesiyamniketa imandla ndvunankhulu ukuthi akahambe asebenzisa bo disaster na nature.
But there are two options: you either adopt or reject. Noma ke senacela ukuexpand lo wena na if you think usolomile lokhona uyayisebenzela i-process.
Ndvunankhulu naye uyilobolile.
Adoption with the amendments. Besho ukuthi lokhu labangavumelana nako usalela ngaphandle. I think we are comfortable with that. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Akulokunye indlu iphindze yadzingidza sishukumiso selilunga lephalamende lenkundla yaseMotshane umhlonishwa Walton Nkambule lelisekelwe lilunga lephalamende lenkundla yasemayiwane Sicelo Dlamini. Lesishukumiso besithi lihhovisi landvunankhulu alikucabange kutsi asebente section 3 subsection 2 wemtsetfosisekelo welive lotsi imitsetfo yelive ayibe ngesingisi nangesiswati. Lamalunga lamabili atsi loku kubalulekile kuze onke emaswati atawati imitsetfo yelive kulokunye. Lesinye ishukumiso bekunguleso selilunga lephalamende lenkundla yakasomdongo umhlonishwa Sandile Nxumalo lesesekelwe lilunga lephalamende lasenhlambeni umhlonishwa Manzizwane. Lesishukumiso lesi kesona besicela lihhovisi landvunankhulu ukuthi ligagule tifo letingatsatselwana letifana nashukela njengesimo lesiphuthumako. Ihhovisi landvunankhulu lebelimelelwe liphini landvunankhulu umhlonishwa Thuli Dladla litemukele letishukumiso totimbili. Ihhovisi landvunankhulu liniketwe emalanga langu-14 kutsi lisebente letishukumiso bese libuyisa umbiko endlini. Bikako ngithemkosi Mavimbela, nginaThemba Shabangu nasamkelisiwe Khoza ephalamende.
Indvuna litiko letekwatisa umhlonishwa Savannah Mazia utsi lelitiko lilungisa tinkinga letabangela kutsi isikolo setebuchwephesha senkampani yahulumende lebukekete science nekucubungula kutsi sigcine sivaliwe. Indvuna beyikhuluma eParliamentary ngesikhatsi iphendvula umbuto wendlu.
Indvuna yetiko letekwatisa umhlonishwa Savannah Mazia wetfulele indlu yabaye esikhulu timphendvulo kulandzela umbuto welilunga leParliamentary lenkundla yaseMbabane East umhlonishwa Welcome Dlamini lotsi indvuna ichazele lendlu ehloniphekile kutsi savalelwana isikolo setebuchwephesha senkampani yahulumende lebukete science nekucubungula ikakhulukati ngoba emaswati abhadala imali lenhle ajika atfola titifiketi labasi labalawula temfundvo tite nansisindvo. Etimphendvulweni tayo indvuna ivetile kutsi hulumende waniketa lo msebenzi lona inkampani yelive lendiya.
We do recognize that we behaved badly and we'd like to apologize to the House and to the students, but we want to be able to ensure we are able to get everybody accredited, or maybe they can add a few courses to be accredited, but we're working on that as I speak to you, Speaker.
Emalunga ke endlu yabaye esikhulu abezaba nembuto kulendzaba.
Silive sendan ini kurikhupha le mali yemaswati lehambile.
Indvuna ngayenze ikhanze kuhlela ukuthi vele sivalo lesikolo leso. Abantwana bahambe baye noma elimkokwini.
Nakho sayinwa le nawo le MOU nalo uptake. Why was no background check on these people? Why is this bunye yalo gcineni? Sisibona sinetinkinga khanye sesenda le background check only to find ukuthi vela basi accredited khona le India.
Indvuna yetiko letekwatisa iphindze yabuya nato timphendvulo endlini.
Is how do we recoup the money that was paid from the Indian company? Honorable Speaker, I think the House knows that there's an investigation that's happening currently in RSTP, and this is part of the issues that are going to be in that investigation and the recommendations of how that money can be recouped. In fact, I can say to the House without fear of contradiction that even the AG's office did not have this contract. So that is why it's a bit of a strange story. So you're right. You're right. It should have been investigated. We should have known before we're sending monies to this institution.
Indvuna ichubekile yaqinisekisa yona indlu yabaye esikhulu ukuthi lelitiko litawuchubeka liqinisekise ukuthi live laseSwatini liyaqina kutebuchwephesha futhi nanoma tinkampani tichamuka eveni tilandzela yonke imitsetfo lefanele kute live laseSwatini litfutfuke kuletebuchwephesha. Lobikako nguSamkelisiwe Khoza naThemba Shabangu na Emmanuel Dlamini eParliamentary.
Iparliamente seyinikete litiko letisebenti tembuso emalanga lange-21 kuhlanganisa umbiko wekutsi hulumende uyilungisa njani indzaba yekunaka inhlalakahle ikakhulukati emaholo abothishela labacashwa kwesikhashana. Indvuna yalelitiko umhlonishwa Mabulala Maseko itsi lelitiko litayisebenta lendzaba.
Indlu yabaye esikhulu ichubeke nemsebenzi wendlu welisuku ngalesithathu lilunga leParliamentary lenkundla yasemayiwane umhlonishwa Sicelo Dlamini esekelwe lilunga leParliamentary lenkundla yaseMbabane East umhlonishwa Welcome Dlamini baphakamise shukumise endlini bacela ukuthi indvuna yelitiko letisebenti tembuso umhlonishwa Mabulala Maseko seketfule lendlu ehloniphekile umbiko ukuthi engabe uhulumende uyilungisa njani indzaba yabothishela labacashwe kwesikhashana contract teachers.
Bothishela bayasifuma Speaker sibahlonishwa sonke 69 bathi bahlonishwa sidonsa amatima ekuphileni kwethu. Hulumende usicashile siqualified uyasiholela hulumende mane akasiholeli ngesitifiketi sethu usiholela ngaform 5
nomsebenzi wabo hayi ukuthi uyancipha Honorable Speaker la kuthiwa phela ukulo B2. Instead umsebenzi wabo uthilwa ngeteka every day. Kube kuthiwa lo msebenzi nalokulo B2 ko uyehla ngabe sithi hayi cha abachubeke baholele imali leyo but nalo umsebenzi uyachubeka uyenyuka.
Indvuna yetiko letisebenti tembuso umhlonishwa Mabulala Maseko ubese uyashukumisa endlini ukuthi kuguciswe kukhulunyiswa kwalendzaba kabanti bese hulumende uyayithatha lendzaba uyoyisebenta.
Ukuthi umsebenzi vele siyawuthanza Speaker kepha nje sekungaba kucela lokho ukuthi bamane basinike 21 days sizoenda lama consultations because lendzaba njengosenshito imgcokwa ithinta impilo tebantu around 16,000 teachers labakhona ever. Yebo lomnye contract lomnye kumbe permanently employed but nje collectively bese kwathinta bonke Speaker sengisho ukuthi sicela kwenda nesizotha 21 days ngicabanga ukuthi ufair.
Indlu yabaye esikhulu ngayo umcondzisi wethi inkulumo umhlonishwa Jabulani Mabuza ibese iyasemukela lesishukumiso sendvuna lesokusho ukuthi indvuna itiko leti-70 tembuso umhlonishwa Mabulala Maseko utawetfula endlini umbiko ngalendzaba ngemalanga lange-21. Lo bikako nguSamkelisiwe Khoza naThemba Shabangu na Emmanuel Dlamini eParliamentary.
Imali lelinganiselwa ku-50,000 emalangeni yatholakala igcishwe ekhathonini lenyama eKentucky Fried Chicken ngesikhathi kuboshwa bomsolwa ecaleni lekubhomba imishina yokukhipha imali ema-ATM edolobheni eMbabane. Lokhu kuvetwe ngumseshi kuleli cala akhona Dludlu lowatise inkantolo ukuthi live laseNingizimu Afrika linentshisekelo esibhamini lesatfolakala kubomsolo.
Bomsolwa kuleli cala lekubhomba lama-ATMs edolobheni laseMbabane basolwa ngekwenta lobucala ngeminyaka wa-2022. Bomsolwa lokungisicelo Msibi Given Mavuso kanye naMzwandile Lukhele bonke benzawo yaseChaskade eveni laseNingizimu Afrika nababoshwa kuleli bebakaze banalindani zitha lokusebenzisa lo msakazo wetithombe. Licala labo lisembi kwamanje lomkhulu waseMbabane Sifiso Vilakati nalichubeka nekutekwa leli cala labo bomsolwa umseshi akhona Dludlu ubale embi kwamanje Vilakati lemali engu-50,000 emalangeni yatfolakala ifuhlwe kwemacatheni enyama se-KFC. Dludlu watise manje Vilakati ukuthi emaphoyisa atshela labo bomsolwa ukuthi abadle lenyama yabo asemaphoyisa agcina le mali njengebufakazi. Uthi ngelanga elilandzelako bomsolwa base bayakhala bathi kukhona umuntu obadlelele inyama yabo. Uyachubeka umseshi Dludlu ukuthula ubufakazi bakhe ukuthi bomsolwa ngekhuleka base baholela emaphoyisa kulelinye lemagaraji kuMathapha lapho bebekade bathenge khona imoto lelihlobo leNissan. Uchubeka uthi kwatfolakala ubufakazi lobufungelwe bazitha lobebukhomba ukuthi nguyelo wathenga le moto kodwa bonke bomsolwa bebekade bakhona. Dludlu uthi umcondzisi waleli garaji letimoto lo Mohammed wanike emaphoyisa imali engu-26,800 emalangeni ebekade kuthengwe ngayo le moto. Watise manje Vilakati ukuthi le moto le yasiyabanjwa ngombuso iba ubufakazi njengalokhu ilizibiti lebucala. Nakachubeka atfula ubufakazi bakhe umseshi Dludlu watise manje Vilakati ukuthi bomsolwa baphinza ngekukhuleka bangakaphocelelwa ngumuntu baholela emaphoyisa esikom kaMsunduza. Uthi nabefika lapha bomsolwa bayise emaphoyisa emotweni elihlobo leToyota Ranex. Uthi kule moto le ku-cabin holder yayo bomsolwa kwaba ngabo labafike bakhomba emaphoyisa sibhamu selihlobo le-9mm. Uthi lesibhamu lesi sinetinombolo letithi FHZ 564 kanti futhi ayasifuna emaphoyisa aseNingizimu Afrika akakasho ukuthi asifunelani lamaphoyisa lesibhamu. Uthi le moto lelihlobo le-Ranex ngiyo liyasebenziswa kulanza bomsolwa belive laseNingizimu Afrika esicancweni engungu. Uthi ngiyo kanye futhi le moto le liyasebenziswa bomsolwa ngesikhathi behla benyuka edolobheni eMbabane bafuna ama-ATMs lebekafuna kuwabhomba. Uthi le moto le beyikazi ichutshwa ngizitha. Umseshi Dludlu uchubeka watisa manje Vilakati ukuthi bomsolwa baphinza futhi bakhombisa emaphoyisa imali lebekade limele naleyo bekade ngakalimali yakatholakala ebhuthini yale moto le-Ranex lathi emaphoyisa atfola ukuthi bekade kuyemsolwa zitha le moto. Le mali lebekade ngakalimali ithena ibalo enkantolo yaba ngu-21,750 emalangeni bese lena beyilimele ibaliwe yaba ngu-12,320 emalangeni. Kube nalenye imali elimele kakhulu engakakhoni kubalwa. Dludlu uchubeka uthi bomsolwa baphinze futhi bayise emaphoyisa kulenye indlu khona kaMsunduza. Uthi le ndlu le kulapho bomsolwa bebekade bafihle khona inhloko. Uthi asaseshe emaphoyisa athola likhathoni lelicingo lehlobo lwe-Hisense ligcishwe imali engu-17,600 emalangeni. Wathi sinkantolo umseshi Dludlu ukuthi ngesikhathi kubhonjwa le-ATM yase-Standard Bank Industrial Site eMbabane nakaphuthuma khona wahlangana nazitha ashayela le-Ranex yakhe. Uthi zitha wabatshela ukuthi usebenzisa liphephandzaba le-Times of Eswatini lesimikisa leliphephandzaba etitolo. Umseshi Dludlu uchubeka uthi nakaboshwa zitha watholakala nemali engu-1,210 emalangeni ekhikhini. Dludlu nakadlala lamavidiyo ikakhulu yase-Standard Bank ubeka umsolwa wekucala kule ndzawo yebucala ukhombe isesh kanye nekwekucalela kwemsolwa wekucala. Dludlu uthi letinvo leti tiyatfolakala kuyo umsolwa wekucala temukele enkantolo njengebufakazi. Ividiyo yase-Nedbank ngase-KFC eMbabane kubonakala umsolwa wesithathu agcoke lijezi linembeji elicembu letembusave eNingizimu Afrika i-African National Congress. Kulamavidiyo amabili bomsolwa babonakele bacuphula ngelipiki kuma-ATMs enzaweni laphuma khona imali bese bahlohla ikhathi lokuchumako. Lobunye ubufakazi lobetfuliwe ngiloko betimpahla letibita 9,949 emalangeni. Letimpahla letishasha Dludlu uthi tathengwa bomsolwa estudio 88 enzaweni yasezulwini. Letimpahla tifaka leto tema-label. Kuthiya kwaleli cala kutawuchubeka ngemsembuluko evikini lelitaho lapho khona manje ivilakati. Utawuya kuyobona itimotolo ehlobo yeNissan kanye neRunX lokugcina ngemaphoyisa eMbabane. Nabomsola batawuphonsa ngembuto obufakazi bemseshi idludlu. Umsola wazitha uvele amelelwe ngummeli wakhe Sibusiso Mabuza. Lobikako ngumfortune dlangamandla ngisenkantolo kamanje eMbabane.
Kutemidlalo licembu leMbabane Swallows FC likhokhe umbiko mayelana nekucacisa ngendzaba yekuphathwa kwalo lelicembu. iMbabane Swallows ithi-ke iyaveta ukuthi licembu leMbabane Swallows alisilo lemndeni wakaGamethe futhi adange selibela kaGamethe, kodwa into leyendeka kuthi loyelo wake waba ngusihlalo kulelicembu wakha inkampani leyatiwa ngeLembabane Swallows Pty Ltd lebekuyinkampani lebekumele yesekele iMbabane Swallows FC. Kulombiko kuyavela ukuthi noma yena Victor Gamethe waba ngumcondzisi kuleli cembu, kodwa leli cembu belisolo liphethwe balandzeli njengoba ke kusho umthetho sisekelo walo leli cembu. Kulombiko losayinwe ngumengameli Absalom Ngwenya uyaveta ukuthi sebedame emahlandla ukucela umhlangano nabo labaphethe yona iMbabane Swallows Pty Ltd, kodwa solo abafuni kuhlangana nabo. Nomsakato ukhulumisene naBongani Dlamini longusihlalo welikomiti leMbabane Swallows Pty Ltd. Lovetileke ukuthi kungemanga ukuthi bona abafuni kuhlangana nalabahola yona iMbabane Swallows FC. Uphindze waveta ukuthi kungakapheli isizini lephelile bebakathe bashito ukuthi batawuyisita le team info lebebavumelene nayo nebeSwallows FC, kodwa lokho ke kube sekuyashintsha nasekuphele isizini lephelile lapho khona babe Absalom Ngwenya wathi ngekwelulekwa bameli babo babeseke babona ukuthi bangasabaniki lelicembu. Kulombiko kuphindze kwavela ukuthi umhlangano lobo bitwe ngibo balandzeli baleli cembu bewungekho emthethweni, njengoba ke umhlangano lo wagcina usemthethweni webalandzeli wabanjwa ngeminyaka wa-2012 kulandzela kusebenzisa kabi kuphathwa kwaleli cembu balandzeli ngeminyaka wa-2008. Kulombiko ke kuyavela ukuthi inqubekela phambili yaleli cembu iyabuketwa ngulabo labafanele. Umbiko utawuphuma ngesikhathi lesifanele. Akulokunye takhamuti takalobamba letidlala ibhola etinyawo ku-social tithi tifisile kutsi tingatfola labo labangabasekela ngetimali kube khona labakudlalelako. Letakhamuti tithi lemidlalo iyabasita kutsi bashukumise umtimba futhi ke baphindze bahlangane bakhulume tindzaba letakha imimango. Letakhamiti betikhuluma uma tidlala umdlalo webungani enkundleni yase-Embo kalobamba. Tingakwenza batetfu tesiswati sitawuba hlola etimakethe sitawubuya sicocisane namlandvo Dlamini lochamuka etiko letasekhaya.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.sz. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi.
Aba research bafunze.
Being risky means ukuthi nalobuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna sente ukukhiqiza lokusembili.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you'll go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Welcome back to the program. Now on to this discussion. During the tabling of the Ministry of Home Affairs Quarter 1 Performance Report, Senate tasked the ministry to improve processes of issuing national documents, which is why now for more we are joined by Communications Officer in the Ministry of Home Affairs, Mlambo Dlamini. A very good morning, Nkosi. I'd like to start here, just for education purposes, defining citizenship. Yini buve ngalokuphelele.
Asibonge kakhulu, sibonge kusi-invite ehlelweni lakho. Kuyasithokozisa silitiko latasekhaya nanis-invite sitawufundzisa ikakhulu sive kusethi sitawati liswati silitiko latasekhaya sithi uliswati nakwente njani. Na ungabuyela emuva ku-constitution yalo live iyasho ukuthi kuneliswati lekutalwa. Lisati ke lekutalwa nguloyo lotelwe ngemaswati lamabili, make aliswati, babe aliswati, loyo mntana uba liswati noma loyo muntu uba liswati. Uliswati na utelwe ngubabe lo liswati angaba make foreign kepha nawutelele lakhaya uba liswati. Kepha nawuthola ukuthi make walakhaya babe akasiye walakhaya senithathene, loyo mntana lodaleka lapho akasilo liswati.
Why is that? Kuyabe sekuhlukaniswa njani ukuthi le parent ngumake noma ngubabe? Why does that apply then?
Kukumthetho sisekelo ngoba nangesiswati sakithi nangathi pheceledi umuntu nakadalwa ekhaya ngibekise dzadzewethu nakadala umntwana yebo umuntu unemakhala amabili kepha likhala lakhe lakibo kulekha boyise. Kanjalo ke ngoba phela umthetho sisekelo nawakhiwa wawakhelwa ekutheni thina esingemaswati siphila njani. Kwakungileyo mpilo ke yemaswati kuthi nangumake nakadala adala athethene neliforeigner vele kubheke ke kuthina abathathana ahambe ayele la enze khona. Nake fika vele yawudala lemendweni umntwana walapha emendweni. Kanjalo ke umntwana kase wasemendweni kusho ukuthi uthatha i-citizenship yeyise.
Mangabe bangakathathani ke
nalapho nabangathathani ikubeka ke ngalokusebaleni i-constitution ithi if claimed, if unclaimed lo mntwana uthatha i-citizenship yenini. Kuclaima kumntwana thina nasibuye etiko latasekhaya ngilapho na ufika into obhalisa khona certificate uthole ukuthi babe uyasho ukuthi cha umntwana ngewami ngiyamvuma. Angene ama particulars amake angene ama-particulars ababe loyo mntwana loyo sokusho ukuthi uclainyiwe lokusho ukuthi akasasilo luswati.
Okay. What are the processes yokuthi nangabe mhlawumbe angadalwa Eswatini but maybe sengihleli isikhathi for some time, you know, now I probably would want to have citizenship yelive laseSwatini. Is there such a thing ukuthi nje ngingasuke before from foreign citizenship to having Eswatini citizenship, and what are the processes there?
Yes, kungenteka. Baningi lese sibabonile noma mihla yonke uthola ukuthi i-citizenship board iyahlala iyawatibuka ticelo letfana naleto. Nasibuyele emuva kuyumthetho sekelo kwathi 2005 now sayinwa kwa establisha i-citizenship board ukuthi kube ngiyo lesale ibuka ticelo tebantu labafuna ku-apply la i-citizenship even itolo bekune conta system whereby sive besikhonta sikangwane bese seyathola leyo conta certificate so yakhona kuphila kepha ke lamuhla kwathi na establishwa le citizenship board kwase ke ya abolishwa le conta certificate lokusho ukuthi umuntu nake fika socala angene through citizenship board afake application yende lawo ma processes le wenda ko ma checks and balances kubuka tintfo letiningi mhlambe lekungafuna sibe nesikhashanyana leside kuze ngitotichaza babuke leto tintfo bese ke emva kwaloko nangabe kubonakala ukuthi nembala loyo muntu ufanele kusanganiketwa i-citizenship abese soyaniketwa.
Na ungasithi nje cha yini letimvo letibuketako leti lemhlambe letiko likubuka ngazo ukuthi cha lo uya qualifya kuba i-citizenship holder yelive leseSwatini?
Nekutiphatha kwemuntu, it's one of the main thing nekuthi ke nake fika ufika utowendane even bantu befika ngetindlela letiningi labanye ufika angisoma business afika lithanze live atshale imali abese sothi awu cha mina sengibona ukuthi angisabuyele emuva sengiphelele la ngilokunye lokubukwako lokho nakuto nakubuketwa leto ticelo.
Ngozoveta ukuthi bafika kuleli ngetindlela letahlukene. We saw conflict in Mozambique. Salibona litiko livula tandla kwemukela ama-asylum seekers ne-refugee seekers. Now kuloku niyabaveta yini whether ude as an asylum seeker or as a refugee or as a business person, yes une original citizenship yelive lakhe, but inasekathi sofuna kuba seSwatini noma sofuna kuba liswati, what's the vetting process here? Okay, in as much as you may have a clean, probably, you know, a clean criminal record, background, lama checks akhona yini?
Ema checks akhona kutotonga tinhlangothi. Nangabuka nje kulelo itsintako yase Mozambique. When they come as asylum seekers, uthola ukuthi bayangena egedeni, labanye bayangena na kuma informal crossings. Kepha uthi lo mthetho immediately bafika abati report ukuthi ku nearest police station nome bavele baqonze tiko letasekhaya bayoti report ukuthi thina sesikhona laveni sito sika yona iaslam lo mthetho ke i Refugee Act 2018 ithi they must report themselves within reasonable time bangenile laven ngilamanye alama checks and balances when it comes to asylum seekers kanjalo nalongene ngebusiness nabo bayavele tiko letasekhaya ba applyele leyo permit yekuhlala even ku citizenship ke iyasho ukuthi nase uhleli ngetulu kweminyaka lesihlanu so yakhona ke lapho bese soyayi-applyela i-citizenship kanjalo nalabangene as asylum seekers bayahlala bathi bahambe kontiwe lawo ma processes bagcine bathole leyo refugee status nasatholile leyo refugee status kahleli leyo minyaka lefanele ubese soyakhona ke kuthi angayi applyela i-citizenship even.
The individuals need to report within reasonable time. How much is reasonable time? And should it happen ukuthi akatibiki kube mthetho ukuthi sengenile kulelo, what are the consequences there?
Licala lelo lelikhulu ngoba nase utholakele ungatibiki so uphule i-Immigration Act lokusho ukuthi you become an illegal immigrant so ungena kwemthetho bayasibuketa leto and they umthetho ke can declare you undesirable in the country.
Kuma submissions ema senators on Monday when I was watching Tindzaba Nkosi kuko kwavela nje indzaba ukuthi kuhle kwendeka ukuthi the is unauthorized issuance yema documents to foreign nationals. What's the ministry's official position in this regard?
My payment documents.
It could be IDs, it could also be passports. It's just there's also, you know, the allegations, well, there's public concern as well.
Yes.
Entry permits as well, I forgot the one.
Tinto lenjalo, tinto lakusebenta khona bantu letendeka lakho. Until uze ubone leso sikhebesi lesinye isikhathi it's when la bese uyasukuma khona uyabuka kuse angabe leto tikhala ungatfala njani. Siltiko leta sekhaya sikubukile ngemehlo labukhali kuphuma kwama documents ngalokho ngekho emthethweni such that we now have installed emalokho nje sesifake sesenda i-auditing of the system on periodically to check ukuthi kude yini ema documents lothola ukuthi aphumile ngalokho ngekho emthethweni. So ezike le auditing ngoba i-auditing uthola ukuthi asiyendi sodwa kule tinye nhlangothi kunalamanye ama stakeholders nawo la faka sandla kusibukisa ngiloyo nasekhona la sakubona ukuthi ayi lokho akuteki dona bese ke sekwentiwa leyo investigation and those lo ubona ukuthi bakwendile lokho bese babona ingalo yemthetho.
I want to applaud the ministry again. Kune registration or rather the mopping up exercise of which I believe namuhla ise Mbabane East and also Galozita. Kuyaye kwendeke ukuthi mhlambe kube khona lo shonako sekutholakala ukuthi mhlambe akacishwa kahle ku system ngadindlela thide. Can you clarify nje ukuthi kukhona lamaswati labambe or that hold Eswatini citizenship under false pretenses? Perhaps we've seen some reports online, but just how true and is it common according to my investigations and ministry?
Ikakhulu into lenjalo bese ke sadiva ngaphandle kwakuleli kepha ke nanathi ngekuthi phela lokunye nje home affairs ucishe ufane emhlaba wonke jikelele lese ukuvile ngalabanye nawe uye uthathe utoku implementa ngalanga kithi thineke sibe nenhlanhla sithena sakha lo mthetho we Civil Registration Act wa 2023 sakubuketa lokunye kwaloko kuthi awu uma kwendeka umuntu ashona bese sekushintshiselwana le identity kwente kanjani but ke kithi uthola ukuthi loyo kungako le Civil Registration Act ikubeka ngalokho sebaleni ukuthi akekho umuntu lotawufihlwa kusingekho certificate section. That's another check and balance yekwenta ukuthi kungabi khona abantu la sebashintshiselana lawo ma documents kanjalo uma ngabe ufika ehhovisi mhlawumbe ngoba bangashintshiselana kepha ngeke bashintshiselane isichazabuve i-ID. Immediately you come with the certificate, ema fingerprints akho will always tell ukuthi lo muntu lona akusasi umuntu munye. Kepha ke again kune system litiko lelisolo liproposer i-modernization system lotothola kuthi ngeku-installwa kwayo noma ngeku-implementwa kwayo itawusita ikakhulu kulama security features lapho khona bantu sebacabanga ukuthi bangashintshiselana lawo ma identification ngoba yona seyisebenzisa tindlela letiningi letfaka ekhathi ngoba uthola ukuthi ne-ID lomunye uyayishutha nje ihlale edrangini but kulesikhathi lesitako vele seyitawufana nemaveni lamanye nabo bo South Africa la uthola ukuthi vele sekufuna ihlale lapho ke-10 ngoba seyisebenta nawe again ungena esitolo kufuneka yona ungena la ungena khona kufuneka yona sijake lapho silive and in that way esisaya kuleyo modernization system kusho ukuthi ne-security nayo itawuqina kungabi khona kushintshiselana kwawo ma-documents.
Right. Initiatives to make local documents or the issuance of the document issuance process rather tamper-proof. That's a good initiative, because now, how do you think unauthorized issuances impact national security, more so immigration control?
Iyayilimata kakhulu sithundi selive ngoba ezikuphuma ema-documents noma kuvakala ukuthi kunema-documents laphumile laphume ngalokhu ngekho emthethweni nelive utawuthola ukuthi kusasa alisa ema-documents alo alisakhona ukuthi lithatheke serious. I can make an example of what happened in the past. I think it was last year. Kwakunelibandla nje lebeliphumile liye ngesheya kwetilwandle. Nabale ngesheya some were holding diplomatic passports, some were holding ordinary international passports. Those that were holding ordinary international passport bathola kuhamba kalula. But those that were holding the diplomatic passport but Kansas bahlala airport for a longer time usacheckwa ukuthi lama passports angiwo yini. So it does have a negative impact even kakhulu kuphuma kwama documents ngalokho ngekho emthethweni. Ngako silitiko letasekhaya siyakucilikela lokho ngato tonke tindlela sizamile kufaka different methods kokuthi sicilikele lokho kuze maswata tawuphepha kuze integrity yelive itawuchubeka ime iqine emaswata ahambe kahle nema documents ethu ateke ukuthi ma documents la very authentic. Umkhuba lofana naloyo kukhipha ema-documents ngalongekho emthethweni siyawukhuta kakhulu silitiko ngato indlela indzaba lesengitichazile ukuthi kune integrity yelive lothola ukuthi iyalimala sek-affecteka bantu lokungafanele ukuthi ngabe ba innocent people ngoba lomunye ungathi ngihamba kwesikhathi mhlawumbe uthi apply visa kulelinye live ba scrutinize lokho ngekuthi kunema documents lekuvakala ukuthi akaphumi ngalokho ngekho emthethweni.
Asibonga kakhulu Nkosi Ngwalimuhle. Loyo bekungumchumanisi welitiko letasekhaya Mlambo Dlamini lobekasifundzisa nje ngetindlela letingeto tekutfola emaphepha ebuve kuleli la kaNgwane. Kungimanje sitawuthatha ikhefu nasibuya sitawubuya ne-traffic update.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Ngiphinze ngamukele ehlelweni ngwalumuhle sesinantombenhle wakafakutse loliphoyisa ke lemgwaco kuleli lotasitshela nje ukuthi engabe imigwaco elive imenjani namhla ekseni nguvusele Tuberculosis ngabe kuyashayeleka invele emigwacweni elive la kangwane yini leseni kunakile njengalokube nihlola imigwaco namhla ekseni
Ngikuvusele Sithole ngivusele naye umbukeli wemsakazo imigwaco elivela kangwane sesihlolile imigwaco leminengi iyahambeka kungaba nje kukhuthaza bona abashayeli basasebenzisa yona imigwaco nyalo ekseni siyathi ukuthi kuletinye isigaba ikhathi basuke baphuthuma khona emsebenzini sithi njeke litubane asizame ngayo yonke indlela ukuthi siligweme kuze ukuthi siphephe nyalo ekseni sisaya khona emisebenzini emadolobha elivela kangwane siwahlolile sibane temgwaco siyasebenza kuwo onke lamadolobha kanye nemigwaco lengenela kuwo emadolobha iyahambeka ngaphandle nje kwelidolobha lelikhulu laseMbabane la sibona khona ukuthi imigwaco leminengi iyakhiwa le singakubika ke lokunye khona edolobheni eMbabane kungaba kusho nje ukuthi umgwaco lo Dr. Sishayi naye lo ngisozisa losuka khona kaTotal uye khona eCheckers lemigwaco leyo yomibili seyiphelile bashayeli nabangena khona ekhaya edolobheni baqhamuka khona ngosibashini batawushayela ngalokukhulu ukukhululeka kepha ke basashayela siyabaqaphelisa ukuthi imigwaco isengadwetshwa abente isiqiniseko ukuthi bashayela bagcine senqele sabo la kufanele khona baphinde futhi bagcine loyo mzila ekufanele bawugcine ikakhulukazi kuwo umgwaco lo Dr. Sishayi losuka khona eTotal uye khona eBasrang umgwaco ke lo Mkhonobovu Road losuka khona emagesini uye khona eMbabane Clinic nawo lo Ngamhlaba Road losuka khona eSibashini ubheke khona eWaterford lemigwaco leyo ke solo sikhona tisikabeto letikhona lapho batisebenzisa emgwaco solo tikhona iyabalayela abashayeli ukuthi umgwaco bangawusebenzisa kanjani sithi nje asibahloniphe basawusebenzisa umgwaco lokunye ke lesingakubika umgwaco lo imigwaco lesendasi elibonjeni la khona sibona khona kunemaloli lamanengi lalayisha wona umoba aye khona emshineni eBig Bend nakhona eSimunye sithi nje bashayeli khona lapho abanakisise kwatise phela ukuthi esikhathini lesinengi uyaye uwe lo moba lamgwacweni abantu labahamba ngetinyawo nabo labahamba ngetimotolo ukhanza sebemile eceleni kwemgwaco babutha wona umoba kulesinye isigaba ukhanza abangasanaki netimoto letiqhamukayo sithi nje sisashayela kuleyo migwaco asihlale sicophelele kuze ukuthi siphephe sisawusebenzisa umgwaco sengephetha nje emthiyane naye umlaleli kungaba nje kukhuthaza ikakhulukazi kwatise phela ukuthi ikolwa tivaliwe kulamalanga bantfana basemakhaya kepha ke lesikubonako ukuthi bantfana labanye sebahlala khona emgwacweni bavala wona ema-potholes babe sesebacela dona imali kubo bashayeli labengawa ngawo umgwaco siyakhuthaza nje kubo batali naso sive nje emangweni ukuthi nabakubona lokho bakwekhute kwadise phela ukuthi bantfa bethu nasebasemgwacweni sebangagcina bangena khona ekhathi etingotini ngale kwaloko mthiyane naye umbukeli imigwaco elivela kangwane iyahambeka ngaphandle nje kwalesi esisishito tisikabeto kungaba kusisela yena umbukeli usuku loluhle naloluphephile basetawusebenzisa yona imigwaco elivela kangwane
Sibakhulundolo lo bekunguntombi enhle fakuthi asipha nje umbiko ngesimo semigwaqo namhla ekseni bashayeli bayacelwa ukuthi bacaphele sive ikakhulu bantwana bona labasebenzisa imigwaqo namhla ekseni baphindze futhi balandzele nayo imithetho yemigwaqo ngwalumuhle sitawusatsa likhefu sibuya netindzaba telulwimi lwesilumbi.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.sz. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
In our English news this morning, His Excellency the Prime Minister Russell Dlamini says the Ngwe mandate is a call to end hunger and poverty in the Kingdom of Eswatini within the shortest time possible. The Premier has said this when opening the second National Agriculture Investment in Daba, where he has also called for investors to explore opportunities in the agricultural sector.
His Excellency the Prime Minister Russell Dlamini officiated in the two-day meeting which aims to attract foreign investors to Eswatini, in particular in the agricultural sector. This will play a crucial role in ensuring that Eswatini attains food sovereignty, as it currently imports 70% of the food it consumes.
As a country, we are blessed to have a visionary leader in His Majesty King Mswati III, who commissioned us on the Nkwe mandate towards the end of 2023 and has declared the year 2025 as a year of transformation. The Nkwe mandate is a call to end hunger and poverty in the kingdom within the shortest time possible. The Eswatini National Agricultural Investment Plan embraces values and principles of global initiatives such as the African Union's Agenda 2063, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 1 and 2, and the Food and Agriculture Organizations for Betters.
Regional Administrator Princess Tsanzile said this meeting will yield positive fruits for Eswatini.
Agriculture has been the bedrock of our nation's economy. Today, with over 70% of our rural community relying on its success, we reaffirm its power to uplift lives and eradicate poverty. Your Excellency, your steadfast advocacy for food sovereignty continues to inspire us. Together with all industry leaders, we shall answer this call to secure a nourished and resilient future of Emaswati.
Food and Agriculture Organization Sub-Regional Coordinator for Southern Africa, Dr. Patrice Tala, said Eswatini has achieved important milestones in food-related issues.
The Kingdom of Eswatini is leading in this respect, and as FAO, we are already using the Eswatini Agriculture Development Fund as an example that can be replicated in other countries. FAO pledges to continue providing technical assistance to EADF, especially to broaden the financial instrument it is deploying.
As this meeting aims to attract investors, government has invited them from different walks of life so they can have first-hand knowledge of local opportunities to maximize on. For Eswatini TV News, Temgosima Vimbela, Ezulwini.
The House of Assembly has adopted the responses for the motion on addressing the health challenges facing the Kingdom of Eswatini. The House adopted these responses with amendments, which include the exclusion of NDMA and nature from emergency procurement entities for drugs in the country. The Premier accepted these amendments.
Last month, His Excellency the Prime Minister Russell Dlamini reported to Parliament what government was doing to address health challenges facing the Kingdom of Eswatini. The Premier said they are working on making the central medical stores a parastatal. They are also considering using NDMA and nature as entities through which government buys medical drugs and supplies. Members of Parliament asked for clarification before adopting the response.
Nangabe simniketa namhla umhlonishwa Ndunankulu umcondzisi ukuthi akaqhubeke ayosebenzisa lo ngabe asiphikisi insini singula labashaya umthetho ukuthi ngala sisebenza lo mthetho ukuthi nayi transformation ayendeke ya central medical stores, but at the same time sithi ngala sesiyamniketa imandla Ndunankulu ukuthi akahambe asebenzisa bo disaster na nature.
But there are two options: you either adopt or reject. Noma ke senacela uku-expand wena na if you think usolomile khona uyayisebenzela i-process.
The Premier weighed in on the matter.
Adoption with the amendments. Besho ukuthi lokhu labangavumelani nako usalela ngaphandle. I think we are comfortable with that. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
The House also debated a motion moved by Mojane Member of Parliament Honorable Wilton Gambule and seconded by Mayiwane MP Sicelo Dlamini. The motion called for the Premier's office to operationalize Section 3, Subsection 2 of the Constitution of the Kingdom of Eswatini, which calls for all legislation brought before Parliament to be presented in both English and Siswati languages. The MPs say this is important as it would ensure that all Emaswati have access and knowledge of the law. Another motion directed to the Premier's office was one raised by Somtongo Member of Parliament Honorable Sandile Nxumalo and seconded by Nhlambeni MP Honorable Manzizwane. This motion sought to move that the Premier declare non-communicable diseases a disaster in Eswatini. The Prime Minister's office, which was represented by the Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Thuli Dladla, accepted both motions. The Premier's office was given 14 days to table a report on the two motions. Reporting is Temgosi Mavimbela with Temba Shabangu and Samgelsiwe Koza. Parliament.
The Honourable Minister of Information, Communications and Technology, Savannah Mazia, says with assistance from the Eswatini Higher Education Council, the ministry is redesigning courses for the Royal Science and Technology Park's Advanced School of IT. The Honourable Minister was speaking in Parliament on Wednesday.
The Honourable Minister of Information, Communications and Technology, Savannah Mazia, gave responses before the Honourable House of Assembly on a question asked by Mbabane East Member of Parliament, Welcome Dlamini, on why the RSTP Advanced School of IT is closed.
We do recognise that we've behaved badly and we'd like to apologise to the House and to the students, but we want to be able to ensure we are able to get everybody accredited, or maybe they can add a few courses to be accredited, but we're working on that. As I speak to you, Speaker.
The House debated the matter.
Silive sendan ini kurikhupha le mali yeMaswati lehambile.
Induna ngeke nisekhanze kuhlela ukuthi vele sivalo lesikolo leso. Abantwana bahambe baye noma elimkokwini.
Lapho sayinwa le nawo le MOU nalo uptake. Why was no background check on these people? Why is sesibona nyalo ekugcineni sesibona sinedinga khanze sesenda le background check only to find ukuthi vela accredited khona le-India.
The Honourable Minister responded to the questions of the House.
Is how do you recoup the money that was paid from the Indian company? Honourable Speaker, I think the House knows that there's an investigation that's happening currently in RSTP, and this is part of the issues that are going to be in that investigation and the recommendations of how that money can be recouped. In fact, I can say to the House without fear of contradiction that even the AG's office did not have this contract. So that is why it's a bit of a strange story. So you're right. You're right. It should have been investigated. We should have known before we're sending monies to this institution.
The Honourable Minister of ICT further assured the Honourable House that the ministry is on tours, improving and closing gaps on the ICT sector. Reporting Samgalisiwe Khoza, Themba Shabangu and Emmanuel Dlamini, Parliament.
The House of Assembly has issued a directive to the Ministry of Public Service to report on the welfare of contract teachers. The Honourable Minister of Public Service, Mabulala Masego, welcomed the motion.
Mayiwane Member of Parliament Sicelo Dlamini, seconded by Mbabane East Member of Parliament Welcome Dlamini, moved that the Honourable Minister for Public Service explain to the August House what informed the decision to place qualified contract teachers on B2, whereas they should be placed on C3.
Botishela bayasifuma speaker sibahlonishwa song 69 bathi bahlonishwa sidonsa amatima ekuphileni kwethu hulumende usicashile siqualified uyasiholela hulumende mane akasiholeli ngesitifiketi sethu usiholela ngaform 5
nomsebenzi wabo hayi ukuthi uyancipha honorable speaker la kuthiwa phela ukulo B2 instead umsebenzi wabo uthile uyangeteka every day kube kuthiwa lo msebenzi nalokulo B2 kuyehla ngabe sithi hayi cha abachubeke baholele imali leyo but nalo umsebenzi uyachubeka uyenyuka.
The Honourable Minister welcomed the motion.
Ukuthi umsebenzi vele siyawuthanza speaker kepha nje sekungaba kucela lokho ukuthi bamane basinike 21 days sitwenda lama consultations because lenzaba njengoba sengishito imgcoba ithinta impilo tebantu around 16,000 teachers labakhona ever yebo lomnye ucontract lomnye kumbe permanently employed but nje collectively bese kwathinta bonke speaker sengisho ukuthi sicela kwenda nesizotha 21 days fair.
The House of Assembly, through the Speaker of the House, Jabulani Mabuza, adopted the Minister's motion. Reporting Samgalisiwe Khoza, Themba Shabangu and Emmanuel Dlamini, Parliament.
An amount estimated at 50,000 emalangeni was found stuffed inside a Kentucky Fried Chicken meat carton during the arrest of the suspects in the case of bombing automated teller machines in Mbabane City. This was revealed by the investigator in the case, Akona Lulu, who told the court that South Africa has an interest in the firearm that was found in the possession of the suspects.
The Mbabane City ATM bombing case dating back to 2022 continues before senior magistrates Fiso Vilakato on Wednesday morning. The accusers Celo Msibi, Given Mavuso and Mzwandile Lukhele, all from Jakarta, South Africa, alongside with Lindani Zita, an Eswatini Television Authority employee, did investigate Akona Lulu, who testifies that 50,000 emalangeni was found hidden in a Kentucky Fried Chicken KFC meat boxes during the arrest. He says police told the suspect to eat the chicken before seizing the man as evidence. He adds that the next day the suspects complained that someone had eaten their food. Lulu further says that the suspects led police to a Matapa garage where they bought a motor vehicle, a Nissan. He says garage manager Mohammed handed over 26,800 emalangeni, the purchase price, and the vehicle was seized as crime proceeds. He continues to add that they also pointed out a Toyota Ranex in Msunduza. Inspector Lulu says police found a 9mm pistol with serial FHZ 564 wanted by South African police. Lulu also adds that the Ranex was allegedly used to transport the suspects from South Africa and to scout ATMs in Mbabane. Inside the boot, Lulu says police found 21,750 Malawian undamaged and 12,320 Malawian damaged cash, plus some 2 damaged to count. Lulu also adds that at another Msunduza house, police found a Hisense phone box with 17,600 Malangeni. Footage from Standard Bank and Nedbank ATMs showed suspects using crowbars to access cash, compartment, and plant explosives. One suspect wore an African National Congress jacket, clothing worth 9,949 Malangeni.
bought a Studio 88 in Zuluini was also seized. The trial resumes on Monday. With an inspection of the Nissan and Ranex, Zita is represented by his lawyer Sibusiso Mabuza, reporting Fortune Dlangamandla, Mbabane Magistrate Court.
Of Agriculture is ramping up export-focused production to attract investors. Agriculture Minister Honorable Mandla Chauka says Eswatini must first secure food sovereignty, then scale up to meet demand in ready global markets. He was speaking at the Agriculture Business and Investment Forum held at the Happy Valley, Ezulwini.
The first thing that we need to do is to make sure that we are able to produce, because you can never export something you don't have. So we need to be able to scale up our production capacity so that we are able to produce, to be able to fulfill the local market first. That is why we always speak about being or achieving food sovereignty so that we are able to feed ourselves and be able to provide enough food for the nation.
Ozel, who is a potential investor, says there is a lot of potential areas of investment in Eswatini.
There are a lot of opportunities for the foreign investors. A lot of tax deductions, incentives, leasing options. The government is literally trying everything to bring foreign investor.
United Nations Resident Coordinator George Wachira has reaffirmed the UN's commitment to supporting the country in its pursuit of food sovereignty and export-led growth.
Every country is struggling in the developing world to meet its development objectives. But if you are landlocked, the climb is that much steeper. And so one solution is increased thinking regionally, integrating regionally, creating possibilities, trade corridors, infrastructure that cut across countries in order for us to make progress. And the Africa Free Continental Trade Area is one incentive in this direction that encourages us.
It is envisaged that there will be 225 participants drawn from various domestic and international financial institutions, private sector players and development institutions, and farmers on the Agriculture Business and Investment Forum. The forum is meant to boost food security and trade. Reporting, Nelson Dlangamandla, Fuminko Sinzinisa, Ezulwini.
Private sector credit took a slight dip of 0.05% month-on-month in June, but maintained strong yearly growth, surging by 6.5% to reach 21.6 billion emalangeni. This is according to the Central Bank of Eswatini's latest monthly statistical release for June-July. Published on Tuesday, the figures signal resilient demand for credit in the economy despite short-term fluctuations, reflecting underlying confidence in the private sector.
The Central Bank of Eswatini states that the slight month-on-month contraction was on account of reduced credit to other sectors of domestic economy and businesses. Meanwhile, credit to households and non-profit institutions serving households registered an increase over the month of June this year. Credit extended to businesses amounted to 11.7 billion emalangeni at the end of June, lower by 2.2% month-on-month and higher by 12.7% year-on-year. A breakdown by business size indicated that credit to both large enterprises and small-medium enterprises declined during the month under review. As a result, credit to large enterprises and small and medium enterprises fell by 3.1% to 8 billion emalangeni and 0.3% to 3.7 billion emalangeni, respectively. Despite the declines, large enterprises continued to dominate, accounting for 68.4% of total business credit, while credit to small and medium enterprises accounted for the remaining 31.6%. Credit extended to households and non-profit institutions serving households edged up by 3.3% month-on-month and 1.1% year-on-year to close at 8.9 billion emalangeni at the end of June this year. At the end of June this year, the liquidity position of banks declined by 2.1% month-on-month, but increased by 7.3% year-on-year. The month-on-month reduction was attributed to a fall in banks' balances held with the central bank, investment in government securities, and emalangeni held by the banks. Despite the decline in absolute liquidity, the liquidity ratio remained unchanged at 30.9% in June this year, the same level recorded in May this year. Provisional gross official reserves stood at 11.9 billion emalangeni at the end of July this year, reflecting a significant growth of 45.1% month-on-month and 12% year-on-year. The notable increase in reserves was mainly attributed to the quarterly inflow of Southern African Customs Union revenue at the beginning of July. At this level, the reserves were sufficient to cover 2.9 months of imports of goods and services, an improvement from 2 months of import cover recorded in June this year. Reporting, Nelson Dlangamandla, Mbabane.
About 1,000 Eswatini who once worked in South African mines and contracted tuberculosis and silicosis are expected to share 30 million emalangeni. Some former mine workers who were found submitting their banking details at the Regional Administrator's Office in Manzini say they have big plans for the money they have long waited for.
The Eswatini Migrant Mine Workers Association Secretary General Vamajele says everyone who once worked in the mines will benefit from this fund, regardless of which mine they were employed in.
We have received almost 1,000 claimants who are supposed to be compensated, and a long time has been diagnosed with TB and silicosis. So we expect that 1,000 to be paid 30 million Malangeni. And this program will run until maybe the end of the year or until we complete the 1,000 claimants. But we will further extend to cover even those that has not been on the list, because there are a high number of those who have been diagnosed with TB and silicosis during the phase of the Tiamiso Trust. So we will run with this program until everyone is paid.
Former mine workers who have submitted their banking details speak about their plans for the money.
12 years.
Some say they will start businesses, while others mention that they will use the money to provide for their families. Other ex-miners say they will use the funds to maintain their livestock. The association says although there are current challenges in assisting beneficiaries when a former miner has died due to past cases of fraudulent use of letters of authority to claim money, it is working with the Master's Office to find a solution. The association expects that by the end of this month, a solution will have been reached as beneficiaries of deceased miner are still entitled to money if the miner died from tuberculosis or silicosis. Reporting Fortune Dlangamandla with Leleti Mhlanga Manzini.
And moving on to sports, the Mbabane Swallows Football Club has issued a statement to clarify matters relating to the ownership of the club. In the statement, the club explains that Mbabane Swallows is not owned by the Gametse family and has never been owned by the Gametse family. The statement further reveals that while the late Victor Gametse was the chairman of the club, the team has always been run by its supporters as stipulated in the club's constitution. In the statement signed by President Absalom Ngwenya, it is stated that they have made several attempts to request a meeting with those in charge of Mbabane Swallows Pty Ltd, but these efforts have been unsuccessful as the company's representatives have refused to meet with them. However, Bongan Dlamini, chairperson of the Mbabane Swallows Pty Ltd Management Committee, told our reporters in a telephone interview that those in charge of Mbabane Swallows FC have never requested a meeting with them. He added that they had informed the supporters they would be taking over the club, a process which was supposed to take place just after last season ended. Dlamini also mentioned that they had informed the Prime Minister of Eswatini about their intention to take over the club. The statement also notes that The meeting called by the club's supporters was not legal, as the last constitutionally recognized supporters meeting was held in 2012, following the mismanagement of the club's affairs in 2008. The statement concludes by indicating that the club's future is being reviewed by the relevant stakeholders and that a further update will be issued in due course. And that's all the English news bulletin I had for you. For now, we'll catch a break after that. Kusile Breakfast Show continues.
Tuberculosis is in the news, but not for the right reasons. A severe resource shortage is threatening the global response to end TB, and the disease is appearing in places where people had forgotten that it existed. Is the world on the brink of a global TB crisis? We are talking about a millennia-old disease that the world has not been able to end. In fact, in the 5 minutes that you will watch this Science in 5, 11 people would have died of tuberculosis. Our expert today is Dr. Teresa Kaseyeva. Welcome, Teresa. Teresa, I heard something that I was also not aware of, and it surprised me that a quarter of the world's population could be infected with TB and not even know it. Could you explain that? How concerned should we be?
You are absolutely right, Vismita. The world doesn't seem to recognize how widespread TB bacteria is. An estimated 1 in 4 people globally have been infected with TB bacteria, and yet not many of them realize their risks. While only 5 to 10% of people infected with TB will develop active disease, that's more than 10 million people falling ill every year.
So, Teresa, TB is a highly infectious disease, right? It's airborne, it spreads through air. Is there a cure? What's the treatment? And how do we diagnose it?
TB is in fact curable disease, but it requires completion of treatment. It would take several months, from 4 to 6 months of treatment with a combination of antibiotics. And even the most challenging, difficult forms of drug resistance, type tuberculosis, could be successfully treated. We have much better options available now. We have shorter, fully oral injections-free and more effective treatment now available. While tuberculosis affects primarily lungs, it could affect also other parts of our body, bones and joints, skin, kidneys, and even brain. Tuberculosis could be successfully treated, but the essential condition is early detection using rapid molecular diagnostic tests, including for the detection of drug-resistant tuberculosis.
Teresa, how can we protect ourselves and our loved ones from TB?
Protecting ourselves and our loved ones starts with awareness, early detection, and treatment. Consult your physician if you see symptoms like prolonged coughing, fever, weight loss, especially if you've been in contact with someone diagnosed with tuberculosis recently. This is especially important if you are belonging to one of so-called risk groups, like children, people with immunocompromised systems, people with HIV/AIDS and diabetes, and undernourished.
So, is the world really on the brink of a TB crisis?
In short, yes. Tuberculosis is the world's deadliest infectious disease. Remember, tuberculosis is a disease of poverty, exacerbated by stigma, conflict, and migration.
Teresa, why should the world invest in TB, and why is that more important now than ever?
Investing in TB response is not only a global health issue, it's social, economic, and global health security imperative. Tuberculosis devastates economies. It affects people in their most productive ages. It increases significantly health care costs. It drains workforce. Unfortunately, millions of people with tuberculosis still don't have access to the life-saving treatment due to the chronic and significant funding gaps. For the first time in more than over a century, we have 16 vaccines candidates in the pipeline. And we know that vaccines could become game changers in the fight against TB. That's why urgent investments in TB research are required. Strengthening TB programs actually improves global pandemic preparedness. TB is an urgent crisis, but one we can end if we act now. The cost of inactions is measured in lives, and we can't afford to lose any more.
That was Science in 5 today. Until next time then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stick with science.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi.
Aba research bafunze.
Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna sento ukukhicita lokusembili.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Show 33 minutes after 7. We have Sunny Lesbia in studio. We want to look at the African Union AIP Summit that we saw happening in Cape Town yesterday, where we saw African leaders gathering to just try to find ways to help, Africa be water secure, but not only just water secure, clean water secure. Iterations were made by these leaders, but I think the most striking one, especially for us, the Kingdom of Eswatini, one that we want to look into is His Majesty the King urging, of course, multilateral financial institutions as well as development partners as well as the private sector to invest in major water projects in the Kingdom of Eswatini for an amount that is worth 40 billion Malanga. And you will remember that 30 billion US dollars was the money that they were speaking under there. And when you do your math, you do realize that that is only 2.2 billion emalangeni from that money, which is only 7.33% of that money. Mr. Spears, I welcome you to the show this morning. Some salient points there. The King highlighted Nonvo Hawane Dam as a priority project, and he says water is central to agriculture, industry and health, and he also presented awards to other leaders. But I suppose the bigger case here is the urgency for water in the Kingdom of Eswatini. How much is that urgency?
Thank you, Mr. Nxumalo, and good morning to the viewer. So when you look at the issue of water, I'll just take you back to, when was it, 2015. Remember we had a severe drought, and Mbabane, the entire capital of the kingdom, had to go without water, had to be rationed, and that's not a good thing. I mean, this is the capital city. You expect it to always flow, and things always flow. If you look into South Africa, Cape Town, every year, same story. They get very close to critical water levels. So what that does then, Mr. Nxumalo, is it not only just affects our ability to drink, bath, and be clean, but it affects, there's issues of vector-borne diseases, there is issues of industry. I mean, imagine if we had to ration Matapa, what would happen? Imagine if we had to ration Malkens, what would happen to the agriculture that's going on there? Imagine if we had to ration the Lowveld, the sugar belt, the Swazi Gold. So the economic implications are very dire there. What this then requires is some concerted efforts, for countries in the region to work up together to make sure that we manage water smartly, because water is not just, we know when you look at a river, you're not only looking at it when it is here in Eswatini, but you've got to understand that no matter how much you dam, Mozambique still needs to get water downstream, and South Africa is always dammed upstream, so that there are those implications.
Yeah. It's quite interesting. We are seeing here that at the end of the summit, there was the agreement that these African leaders adopted the Cape Town Declaration. And, the AU is to mobilize now 570 billion emalangeni, 570 billion emalangeni for 25 countries. And Eswatini is amongst, those 25 countries. If we were to do our math and say each country gets an equal share from that 570 billion, I suppose we get a huge chunk of money, more than what even the King said we need. The King said we need 40 billion emalangeni. So I suppose the future is bright. Indeed, there are greener pastures that are coming. But I wonder if we could secure just a fraction of this financing, what could it do for Eswatini?
It would do quite a lot. I mean, if you look at what the Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources has done, if you look into the past 3 years, we've seen the budget to the ministry now go into the billions. That's the country's commitment to ensuring that we do get access to clean and potable water for all Emaswati, while at the same time we are driving industry. So the benefits of clean water result also in, good health for Emaswati. So it's not only just an issue of looking at the investment, but there are benefits. You'd be lowering your vector-borne diseases, you'd be lowering on uncommunicable diseases, and you'd be giving Emaswati a good quality of life. And you're also allowing industry to thrive in the process, because, we often not look at water as we do at fuel, but water is also a backbone of industry. No industry goes where there's no water, because whatever machinery is there must be cooled at some point, and it needs clean water.
It's quite interesting, because you are citing the everyday need for water, not only for personal use, for business and for the broader economy, which is something that we too often overlook, perhaps because it is always available, but not so much in underserved areas. And I suppose that is another conversation, and seeing the King's foresight and his vision whenever he speaks to international partners or multilateral organizations. His heart is always with those that do not have currently. I wonder, when we look at our statistics, they do show us that what is it, over 60% our underserved areas still struggle with clean water. It's quite concerning.
Yeah, it is quite concerning, and probably because you have to look at how settlements are formed. Settlements usually get formed around issues of water. If you look at how, for example, when you go up there from Ethiopia all the way to Egypt, you will see that the Nile somehow determines the population distribution within those areas. However, we cannot then say because people have to somehow find ways to be around places where there's clean water.
Right.
We have to understand that there is the population distribution. And what then makes it difficult, to get these investments to those different areas is the fact that you then tend to look at the population numbers in those areas and then you decide that now, maybe, pumping the resources there is not as much. And I think that's what we need to do to get to the next development frontier. Because when you look at our underserved areas, most of them, Mr. Ngumalo, it is those areas that are prone to drought and those areas that have the right conditions only if you irrigate for all year round farming. And that's an agricultural industry and economic activity waiting to be just awoken there. So we do need to focus on those areas because it does bring about a bit of change and a bit of economic resilience. It's not only just an issue of bringing water, but we have to look at water as a catalyst to poverty alleviation, and water as a catalyst to economic growth.
So let's plug the leaks now and save the system, because if you really look at our municipal displacement, you see that nearly half of our municipal water disappears through either leaks, theft or faulty billing. Can we either inform policy or come up with policy and economic levers that can, we can pull to stop that loss? It sounds like a lot of loss.
It is, and I mean, if you look at what is happening in Eswatini, we're seeing the Eswatini Water Services Corporation moving towards being an efficient, being an efficient company. We're seeing, they are coming up with what's it called? Prepaid water. That way you are able to monitor your water usage, and that way you will be in charge and know that there's a leak somewhere.
Right.
And it's costing me. So we need to ensure that we are investing in such initiatives and using technology to make sure that we can plug the leaks. Because I think one thing that makes it a bit difficult to be efficient when it comes to water, Mr. Ngumalo, number one, is the fact that water has to be offered at a very cheap cost. At a very cheap price, at times even below cost, because it's a state utility, and that state utility is pumping the water into people's homes. But now what we need to do, I've always been a proponent of pseudo-privatization. There is no reason why a state-owned entity cannot function like a private company, because if this was in private sector, it wasn't going to happen. We wouldn't want this much leakages, because that's revenue, that's money going, right? So we need to then get that mentality into the public systems and the public enterprises to act as though they were private, and not even touch on the cost, but just make sure that we are being efficient in what we are doing. We're able to save the water, so that even tomorrow water is able to get to areas where it's not where ideally wouldn't get. So we do need to adopt that mentality, and we do need those investments to make sure that whenever there's pipes that need to be fixed, we are able to fix them, and without affecting the cost and the revenue structure of the entity. So that requires financing, Mr. Ngumalo, but not too much of it, so that people will then start being very easy and eating the money, if that's even the word. But no, get people to a point of efficiency, so that we're able to do that. And I think that's where this summit comes into place, because a person will be asking themselves, why are they spending so much money to go and sit about water when, in essence, that money that's spent there could have done something? But there is the G7 that's upcoming, and South Africa is chair of that summit. But what we're seeing in terms of climate financing globally, you go to your COP, I think it's now COP 25 or COP 26?
Yeah, probably 26 now.
Yeah, you go there, and these countries, the G7s, your G20s, they make these big promises, and these promises are just never materializing. Yet we know that our water problems are also due to our climate vulnerability. And when you look at Africa's footprint in Africa's carbon footprint, it is not that high. But we bear a huge cost of that, because we are not yet that resilient. So we do need to make those that advocacy to make sure that we get the money coming into Africa, so that Africa can actually be even if when we take the green energy route, but let us have the funding and access for it. And at times, this should be concessionary because we also do worry about the ballooning debt levels in Africa.
Yes.
And most of them are being driven by green investments. You know, countries in a bid to be green are going out there taking loans left, right, and center because those becomes the facilities and funding lands available. So we not that we need to get the globe to understand that, you know, we have your island nations, we have Africa, who needs to be assisted to get into the green space. Otherwise, let us go back to the fossils because we have those and we have them in abundance. And it'd be easy for us to just use those, but we are trying to get to a level where we are being green, but we need support in that end. Yeah.
It's quite interesting. So I suppose your first assertion in terms of a recommendation is that, you know, the prepaid direction that we have taken will sort of remedy some of these issues that we see here, because it sort of puts the onus on the user to realize that, oh, I'm hurting myself really, really bad here. And so if they can feel that pinch in their pocket, they can try to be, you know, to be more compliant and steward as well as efficient. But also, I love how you then juxtaposed that with the responsibility that state-owned enterprises need to realize and wake up to, that perhaps they do want to operate like private companies and just throw away through the window this level of complacency that we continue to see with some of the way that they operate. I think that is interesting, and I hope that they eventually heed to that, because I do remember when the Prime Minister assumed office, he did sit down with all of them, and those were some of his concerns as well. And he said that that must change. But let's look at you know, declining quality and the rising risk now. We've seen that to what you've just said as well. Water compliance, quality compliance rather, it has plunged from 95% in 2014 to just 54% last year. It's a big plunge. What's driving this decline?
One of the issues there, Mr. Ngumalo, is, you know, as we are trying to get water to those underserved areas. So what we've seen happening is you get to, what's it called? You get to just make sure that you can pump the water without necessarily cleaning it in terms of the quality. So it's one of the things that we are seeing. And, you know, you have to then somehow balance reach and quality. That is where we say, you know, we do need a lot of the assistance, because setting up these plants becomes a huge cost for governments to ensure that we're able to get them. And another thing that we've seen, Mr. Ngumalo, that then contributes to this is the lack of adequate technologies, you know, of sustainable technologies to ensure that the water in my house, like right now I just used 150 liters just to take my bath so I can come here. And I mean, that 150 liters, as soon as I'm done with it, the only thing I do is I just open that faucet there, the faucet, whatever, the stopper, and then it goes, right? Yet, ideally, in other countries, you see there's investments to make sure that you can reuse that water as much as possible. I can still use that very same water to flush my toilet. I don't necessarily need clean water to flush my toilet. The water that I used for taking my bath can still be used for that. I can still use that water to, say, for example, if I had a garden, to water the garden, to water my plants. So we need those technologies. And if you look into, we've seen such innovations happening in South Africa, you know, yet around Cape Town, where there's this investment, I'm forgetting the name, this device that they put outside your homes and your kitchens, your sinks and whatnot, so that you can actually reuse quite a huge amount of the water that you've used, and that actually proved it would cut water consumption by 50%. Not because you're not consuming more, but because you are reusing the water that you've used, which is relatively clean. So what we also need is you know, financing for such, so that the cost of reticulating water is not as high, doesn't dwell mostly with the utilities, but also within households we do our bit. And if we then reduce our external demand, or our demand that comes outside the households, then that means you allow the water utilities company to somehow focus on purification and other issues, not just on reticulation.
It's quite interesting. I do want us to look at, infrastructure, because when you look at, and you listen to the King's speech at the summit, he cites some, ongoing projects in the Kingdom of Eswatini that will require a lot of money, and I suppose that is, linked to the 40 billion Emalangeni investment that Eswatini needs. But I want us to look at a specific project, the Manzini water project that has seen over 1 billion Emalangeni invested. What kind of ripple effects, for the viewer to sort of appreciate what we mean by investment in water, what kind of ripple effects in health, it could be in productivity, education, and perhaps inequality that we can expect if such projects are expanded?
So what we look into when we talk of water as an investment and water, the very basic of it is we need water to consume, right? And Manzini is the hub of the Kingdom of Eswatini. There is a huge population concentration there. So you do need to make sure that you get water reticulated and flowing through those areas, purely because what it then does, if people have access to clean and potable water, you are improving on people's hygiene. So when you look at water, we usually classify water as water sanitation and hygiene projects, right? Yes. WATSAN. So a cleaner environment in itself lowers disease or mobility factors there. That's evidence that we have seen happening across the globe. So number one, you are improving the quality of life of people, you know, and you are reducing waterborne diseases within that region, and making sure that once you've done that, you are lowering the demand on health. So people are not going to necessarily go to hospitals because they now have diarrhea, they now have cholera, and those are vectors that can actually crash and bring the health system to crumble, because the way it then spreads, it's very fast, right? So it adds pressure on the health system. So right now, if you can prevent those and make sure that you generally just getting people to be clean, you're lowering that incidence and you're lowering those that burden on the health sector, freeing it to deal with the urgent and critical cases. And then there's also the issue of industry, Mr. Nxumalo. Within industry, we need water. Industry thrives on water. There is no industry that doesn't need water. The problem with water is, in early stages of development, it seemed to be an abundant resource. It is only now that we are seeing that if we do not preserve water, it is no longer an abundant resource. It's becoming a resource that we need to use sparingly because of climate change and all of those issues. But before, we were quite relaxed around it because we knew, the rains are coming in June. But right now, the rains are coming in August. But right now, I remember last year, we were all worried when the rains didn't come until February, because it was like Hawane Dam was now at 20%, 30%. There are those issues that are happening. So it is a backbone of industry. All industries needs water to cool. And as a country, we are looking at venturing into food processing and food manufacturing. So that is a water-heavy and a water-dependent industry. If we do want to unlock that industry, we need to make sure that we've invested in water. And we need not just water, you need clean water, because you don't want industry to then have to purify as well. Now that's a cost. It sends industry away. So we need to make sure that we get the water in that 95% level, so that when it goes into the food, our food can pass any phytosanitary test out there, and we can actually export it to the globe. So we need to make sure that we do all of those things.
Okay, I think we do still have a bit of time left, because I have two questions for you, but perhaps we'll get to the private sector opportunities in the end. But for now, you have mentioned the concern around, the climate crisis, I think in a couple of your answers, and I see how much of an imperative that is, an urgent one, because we want to design for drought as we make these investments. But perhaps I really haven't seen much conversations around necessarily designing for drought here at home, because we have high water stress, recurring drought cycles, as you mentioned. Climate resilient infrastructure becomes an imperative. It is not optional now.
Yeah.
How can Eswatini then integrate some principles there into new projects, ones that will be completely new, and where can Summit finance models help, particularly this finance that we want?
One thing that I like about this summit is it looks into those, it's the key focus of this summit is actually coming up with bankable, drought-resistant and climate-resistant water programs. You know? So we're looking at conservations. So we do know that once we do those, we're going to get the water, you're going to get financing to finance those resilient programs, right? But what we then need to do as a country as well is to move a step further and say we are going to take the environment serious. When we do investments, we need to look at the environmental footprint, and we do need to look at the long-term, impacts of it in terms of the environment and whether it is the most efficient type of investment. So
do you think we have those strategies in place right now, at least, or conversations here at home, besides the summit, just here at home, have we seen conversations around climate resilient strategies or projects?
We have, but we tend to, my problem with this is we tend to have those conversations around those days of visibility.
And then there's inertia.
And then there's inertia after that. But what we need to do is make sure that we have mainstreamed so that whenever we do something, we don't even need to talk about it. We just need to know that when we're doing something, it must be friendly to the environment. And how do we mitigate those negative footprints of that? So we need to make sure that it is mainstreamed. It's the mainstreaming that I think we are lagging behind.
What I like about all these things that continue to confront us is that they all just come with a beautiful silver lining, one that solves, I suppose, the biggest issue that we have in the country, which is youth unemployment. Or let's just say unemployment, because it's not only the youth, but yes, indeed, the young population is, in fact, bearing the biggest brunt there. Beyond the dams, and, we want to look at the large-scale infrastructure that could come with this in terms of employment impact, the private sector opportunities. Talk to me about what secondary business opportunities could arise for local SMEs from the increased water availability, particularly in agro-processing, because that's such a backbone of our economy, as well as tourism, perhaps, and manufacturing.
So we are looking into, tourism, for example, becomes one of those direct beneficiaries because water does create an aesthetic look, and, imagine having a very nice dam within our very luscious mountains and whatnot. That's something that tourists would want to go and see. So there's an opportunity for the youth there. And then in terms of private sector, once we can get our water supply in place and, we can then venture into that agro-processing space, that food processing space, and that's going to grow the economy. But there is this one that we barely ever look into, but there's a huge economic opportunity there. When you look into grain enterprises, you could, the way you structure this is you could structure it in a way that you understand we have a problem of youth unemployment. How do I get them involved in the reticulation of water? We're seeing this happening already now in energy with independent energy producers. So you could look at finding ways of how do we make sure the youth in this particular area is in charge of reticulating of water, the treatment, the whatnot. And we've seen that happening, the Green Revolution, green enterprises, and, social, what we call it, social entrepreneurship and all of those things. So there are quite a number of opportunities that we need to leverage. But what we need to do is make sure that we understand what we're doing and we get people involved in that space and liberalize a bit of that space so that people are within their communities are able to supply the water and they get the right licensing and they take care of the cleaning of the water. And we've seen this work in quite a number of countries, such that has led to a booming agricultural industry. It has led to a booming local supply. I mean, just up there in Gwavuma, when you just climb that mountain by Big Bend, there is one such beautiful project there. And I mean, that's something we can learn from as a country.
I suppose we should take the baton from that and try to spread it out across the whole country, because like you are saying, I suppose that would be an interesting value chain, that water reticulation and the job opportunities that it could open for our young, particularly people in the country. But, the agro-processing and just agriculture space has immense opportunities, but at the same time, some concerning statistics that, the Principal Secretary from the Ministry of Agriculture, unfortunately, because we're running out of time, then told me off air. He said the average year for a farmer in Africa is 60 years old. And you're like, well, such a young continent. We are a young country in Eswatini, and there's so much opportunity in farming. Surely our youth can get up and farm.
Yeah, we can, but we need to get it to a point where it makes sense.
It's conducive.
It's not necessarily conducive.
Okay,
It
but
makes money.
sense. It makes...
You need to make money such that when somebody comes and offers you a job, you're already making that much in agriculture.
Fair enough. Suddenly, let's be our economist. 59 minutes after 7. We were discussing the Africa Union AIP Investment Summit that took center stage in Cape Town with African leaders gathering there to try and, speak on means to really help Africa be water secure. This is the end of our program today. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.